Okay, so welcome to episode 7 of the Freedom Hustles podcast. A podcast dedicated to all the best hassle-free hustles, trying to give you more time and money. So here we are again. How you doing?
Yeah, not too bad yourself.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so
What's
good week. Been all right?
It hasn't been too bad. It's been a bit rainy, a bit on and off, bit miserable. But
Yeah,
yeah,
classic bank holiday weekend.
yeah. I forget it was a bank holiday. It suddenly came out of nowhere, and then so
we done one of the eat out to help out things, which was as part of the sort of government scheme that's sort of now come to an end. For listeners outside the UK, that's a sort of incentive plan to get people to go out and spend money. But yeah, so that's all finished now, but it was all right. But anyway, so moving on. So today, something a little bit different. So what is it we're going to be discussing?
we're going to discuss a little bit about copywriting, persuasion, and why you should never trust a newspaper. Well, that'll come later on in part of the talk. Well, basically, it's all about copywriting and trying to sell your products or your services.
Yeah. Okay.
Because as you know, you've been in selling products online for quite a while. There are specific ways that you do that, and there are better ways of doing it than some people. And the thing with copywriting, it's very powerful. It's very psychological. Okay, so we're not going to go into a huge amount of copyright because there's a lot to talk about. In fact, there's podcasts which are dedicated to the art itself, talking about different aspects each week. So we'll just talk about some of the sort of the important parts. Yeah. And that is, if you've got a product that you are trying to sell, whatever the product is, or a service, there are two things, and I picked this up in quite a few books, but Jim Edwards' Copywriting Secrets book talks about these two major points. It's the before-after bridge and the problem, agitate, solve. Mm-hmm. So when you're writing your sales copy to promote your product, that there are these two ways, and one of them is to try and using the medium of story. We'll come around to story in a minute because story is very powerful, and that is you try and convey a life before your product, a life after your product. So whatever the results that product can deliver, you imagine someone who's basically short of funds and time, and then you try and get them to imagine a life where they have more funds and time. And then the bridge is basically then you trying to convince or trying to show or tell people that your product can take them from the before to the after. Right. So that's before, after bridge. And then there's the other system, which basically they both can be used sort of together. And this is one where you'll find, now we've talked about this many times offline, things like the Daily Mail. It may get a mention, but problem...
The Daily Fail.
Or the Daily Hail. Problem, agitate, solve. And this is where newspapers come in perfectly. Now, they are perfect businesses. They are brilliant businesses for copywriting, to study because of their headlines and the way they write things. And that is, if you've got a product or service, you identify a problem that your market have or certain people have. You find that problem, then you agitate it. So you poke it with a big stick, and then you offer up a solution. So it's problem, agitate, solve. Now, this is one of the things that you'll probably notice with British newspapers. I don't know what they're like around the world, but especially the British ones, is that their business model is based on making people buy their paper so they can see advertising which has already been paid for. So really, you're paying to see advertisement. It's brilliant that way. Well, they identify with a largish group of people who've got money. And so then they key into that problem, which in the UK, unfortunately, has been a lot of immigration and Brexit and stuff like that. So then they find that problem, then they agitate it, and then they offer up their solution, which is, what the Daily Mail says or what they want to do. And it angers people. And the reason why they agitate the problem is because it gets them emotional.
Emotion,
and emotion is how people buy.
That's it. Yeah, I was just literally that. I mean, that's an amazing introduction, I will say. Yeah, I mean, this is not really an expert field of mine. I mean, I do know a little bit about it. I do try to write a lot of my own copy and that sort of thing. And but yeah, I've read the Jim Edwards Copywriting Secrets book you're talking about. Highly recommend that to anyone that's listening. But yeah, that last bit is what I wanted to kind of touch on, because that is essentially it, isn't it? It's a sort of emotion versus logic, and it's emotion that tends to get people to buy.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to kind of elaborate on that a little.
Yeah, I mean, emotion. I remember the story of some guy called it the chocolate frog, and he had a child who had a problem with his. Well, I think it was like an earache or something, and they needed basically earache medication, and the
Yeah.
child was suffering, and they basically said, right, it's time to get your medication. They didn't want it. They were, I don't want it, but I want a chocolate frog. And so it's, as you say, logically, you're in pain, you don't want the pain, you must get rid of the pain. But people buy an emotion, and that was what that child wanted. He wanted the chocolate frog. And yeah, logic is never really in there when people are buying. People buy because, as you say, they want
something. Not exciting enough, is it? It's not. It's not. Do you know what I mean? It's like you say. It's all about that impulse, emotion buy, isn't it?
Which is why a lot of the car industries, in the magazines and the adverts they used to do years ago, would have been basically you had a sports car or a muscle car, or they used to be known in America. So they were trying to sell them to these sort of youngish middle-aged men who've got money. And so they would sell them by draping them with semi-naked ladies or wearing tight-fitting outfits, because it's the emotion of sex. You know, it gets them going, sort of driven.
Yeah.
You know, it. In many ways, that's we'll come into this later on. It's the benefit of having a car. So the feature they would probably say is, it can get to 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. That's like a benefit. But most people realize, say, the feature is it can get to 0 to 60 in 2 seconds, and the girl next to you will be going, wow. And it's like,
that's the benefit.
Yeah, so the feature overshadows the benefit, and it's the features that you can get from a product, which is often the emotional driver.
Right.
So and the other major thing that people tend to buy from, which again comes back to emotion, is confidence. I was just listening to this the other day, and they were talking about there's this big debate whether people buy because of the transformation or what, the results that it can offer. But a lot of the time, it's confidence. And so another thing is that if you're writing a sales letter, or you're creating a sales video, or you're selling a product, people often buy off the confidence that you ooze and the confidence that you can instill in them. So if if they're like scared of investing money in a certain product, then by the time they finish reading your sales copy, they feel confident that it's going to be a right decision, or they feel confident in you as well. Then that's going to make a purchase. I mean, that's emotion, but that also explains, I was thinking about this the other day, you've heard of Alex Jones, the guy who's the conspiracy nut on YouTube.
Yeah, didn't he get banned? Or he's just been banned, and he from
probably.
I don't know if he did get banned. I don't know. Yeah, I know the guy you're on about. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of them. I mean, you can even put Nigel Farage in that kind of instance, and that is like you have to. Most logical people will sit there and question that these people have said this is going to happen, that's going to happen, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, and they don't. There was a joke saying that Alex Jones has correctly predicted 2 of the last 32 recessions, because he's always saying this is going to happen, that's going to happen, but it doesn't. And people don't go, well, actually, you've said 32 and you've only got 2, so you're 30 out. You're actually a bit crap. But it's because when they go on there, they have that persona. They believe what they're selling, and they are confident. And it seems that people believe in that.
Yeah, well, it has happened, doesn't it? It's that tribalism effect again, isn't it? Which we've touched upon before.
It is, and like
we were saying, like you mentioned earlier, but like one of the top British newspapers, the Daily Mail. It doesn't matter what they print on there. They get their buyers. They're already in. They've sold in. They're bought into the system. They'll buy it, and it's about that. Like you said about the nudge effect, they can pretty much control and dictate the way people believe and the way people think and the way people respond to certain things by just repeating the same message over and over again. And I know me and you have talked about this before, but not every time people buy first time, do they? You know, you might need a little bit of persuasion, and that's what the papers have got absolutely right. You know, they will keep on, you know, hammering that message.
Studies have been shown that the repetition of a point 7 times is enough to persuade a voter. Now, that's not basically meaning the sort of repetition where you're saying vote Trump, vote Trump, vote Trump. It's not that kind of repetition, but it's the repetition of the point. And the one thing that papers have is that they have 364 opportunities to repeat their points. Yeah. You know, they're published every day apart from Christmas time, and I don't know if there's a Christmas edition, but so 364 days, they've got a target audience. And as we know, the Daily Mail and other newspapers, which are owned by very wealthy people, they are registered outside the UK, so they're not paying tax. And because of the European Union, which was basically trying to clamp down on tax evasion, a lot of the wealthy media companies wanted out of the European Union. So they had 364 days to basically create anti-European messages.
Yeah, spread fear and hate and everything, yeah.
Using copyright techniques with the headlines, because basically a headline, you know, they sensationalize it, which is emotive. It gets people emotive, and this is something you should do in your sales copy. So with like emotion, and they will pick up on certain words, like I said, agitate, problem, agitate, solve. So in the UK, if you've got a problem, if you believe immigration is an issue, and unfortunately Islamophobia is an issue, you look at the Daily Mail, they'll be saying things like Muslim immigrants claim household, and it's like suddenly it's got those buttons firing. And so with emotion, you do that with your sales letter, and that doesn't always have to be negative. It often has to be positive. So it has to be like, so if you identify with someone who is short of funds, then let's say that they want, they're short of funds, they're short of time, they want to find a way to make an extra £1,000 a week, but without having to do another 40-hour graft. So if your headline was basically saying something like, you know, earn £1,000 extra a week by doing 5 minutes in your tea break, that's kind of appealing to people because they've already thought, well, I need that money. I don't have a lot of time. Apparently it's only going to take a tea break. So you're starting to get the emotion sort of going, and people are thinking, I want to know more about that product. So that's one thing. If you're ever interested in newspapers, it's really worth reading their headlines because they are masters of triggering people. So
I am a fan. I read a lot of copy everywhere, you know, including newspapers, irrespective of what political side of the fence I sit on. I'll read both sides because it's important, I think, to get. It's important to see both sides, but it's also, like you say, you can kind of learn from the copy techniques and that sort of thing. But so I just wanted to kind of go back to the kind of online world then. So we've kind of discussed briefly about how it's used in sort of mainstream media, which can then obviously be portrayed to other things. But, you know, we've touched upon briefly emotion is what, you know, gets people buying. We've also mentioned a little bit about the difference between kind of features and benefits, and you know, it's perhaps, you know, one over the other that gets that kind of more buying intent. But I just wanted to also mention for people that are, you know, perhaps in the online space or thinking about getting into it, learning basic copywriting kind of applies to sort of all things, doesn't it? It's not just, you know, you don't just apply copywriting to like a massive sales letter that you're going to sell something with. I mean, for me, I'm starting to kind of try and use it more now on everything from, you know, social media posts to, you know, an email that I might send out, you know, to a little call to action on a blog. You know, it can be kind of used in all aspects now, can't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, copywriting, a true copywriter these days isn't just about sales letters. There's your video sales letters, so which basically technically is a script. So you're writing a script for people to read out. There are email copywriters and get paid quite a lot of money actually, an email copywriter. But you're writing basically, there's two types of writing, really. I think this is the way a lot of people think copywriting is those who write sales letters or sales copy, and those who just write other stuff. Who, they lump other forms of advertising into there. But I think basically copywriting is a form of writing which is written purposely to get a result. Other writing is often just information-based, sharing information. You might be a bit of an emotional response in there, but on the whole, copywriting is to get someone who reads it to take action. So that could be a Facebook advert. Again, you'll often use specific copywriting techniques in there, which will be, if you see a lot of Facebook adverts, you'll see a lot of bullet points. Bullet points are powerful. To have a list of bullet points, it often breaks it down into easy chunks. They'll have sentences or paragraphs which are probably no more than 2 to 3 sentences long, so they break it up. It's easy to read, lots of white space. They will do lots of imaginative writing, so you'd be like things like picture this, or sort of imagine blah 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 blah. So you get them
the person thinking,
get them thinking in the mind. You get them sort of become more emotive, and then there'll always be like a call to action, even if it's a subtle call to action. So even if it's something like at the end of the post, like, and if you found that interesting to learn more, click here. That is a call to action.
Yeah.
So you'll have that in your Facebook post, your Instagram post, your email, your article. So copywriting. Copywriting is basically just writing to get a result, to get an action. Some people are a lot better at it. Some people are natural at it, but it's one of those. It is a skill that you can learn, because basically it's just like learning a form of writing. It's not. I'm not saying I'm fantastic at it. There's, even if I was in this field 20 years, there'd probably be people far better than me. But everything that I know now is what I've learned. I didn't know it 10, 20 years ago. So it is something. But if you study blogs, you study Facebook adverts, Instagram, you'll see people using it all the time.
So I also started to tell people a little bit more like that now. I mean, there's a kind of a little bit of a space that I'm kind of exploring at the moment. I'm not all in sold on it, but a platform that I'm using at the moment is Instagram, and there's some pretty interesting sales techniques on there. We'll talk about this a little bit more detail now, but you've got one of the kind of mediums, if you like, on Instagram is Instagram stories. Now, it's a kind of a quick 15-second clip where you can build it all up and you can put a load of them together to kind of give a little story. And I see it as a kind of, take your guard down opportunity to kind of talk a little bit. I mean, I use it just to talk into the camera and talk a little bit about, what's going on and this, that, and the other. And I tend to get more of a response from those than I do the actual posts. I don't know why that is, but certainly in the posts now, I'm seeing, like you say, such a broad spectrum of stuff. Some of the stuff you just see, it might just be a single image of something, and it doesn't really tell me what it is. And I'll kind of read the text, and again, it's a bit vague, and there's nothing really there. So it doesn't get me to do anything. A lot of people are just out for likes and just out for, to sort of fuel that ego, which again doesn't really do anything. And then you get the other posts, which are amazing in the sense that they'll kind of take you on a little bit of a journey. And then at the end, there'll be a very, very specific call to action, which won't be go and buy my $1,000 course, because you're not really going to do that from one post. But it might be something like, have you experienced this? Yes or no? Okay. So all they want is a simple answer to a question. And that then gives them an idea as to who out of their followers is more engaging. So, and then they can kind of follow up that. They can do retargeting ads or, whatever they can do. And then that could be perhaps like you mentioned about the 7 or, the multiple kind of
influencing the voter.
Influencing, and that could be one. The following day could be another one. Oh, it's the same people again. Later on in the week, it might be, here's another one, but this time it might be this, sign up to my email newsletter, blah, blah, blah. then a percentage are going to do that. And then, like you say, later on down the line, step 7, step 8 could be, have you checked out this course? And then before you know it, they're a buyer. Yeah, but it started way back on an Instagram post, which could have been just something else, but with them points in there. Do you know what I mean? Am I sort of making sense?
You are, yeah. I mean, it's like you said, going back to the repetition. And there's 2 points that you put there, which I think I'm going to explore more deeply now. And you mentioned stories and you mentioned specifics. So I'll quickly talk about specifics. Specifics is powerful in copy. So, for example, there's specifics and they're what they call wiggle words. So if you was writing something, so like for example, me and you, we have generated around $1,000 in commission from T-shirt sales in 1 month on a couple of websites we did a few years ago. So if we were doing a product, we would say, learn how to generate $995 in 1 month by doing this 5-minute task. So we're not lying, but there's specifics there. So people know that in 1 month, by doing like a short 5-minute task, there is a potential to earn around $900 and $1,000. Whereas that's being specific. So if you were going to do like a wiggle room, you could say, and this comes back to confidence. If you give a specific, it comes across as being confident. If you were to say something like, you could possibly earn around $1,000 in the next few months by doing this task, which will take just a few.
Maybe, yeah.
You kind of like thinking, oh yeah, okay, are you sure? So specifics is good, but like you said with Instagram, every time you're posting something, it can be a picture, it can be a short video, it can be a story, it can be questions, it can be a series of things, but it's all pointing to the same repetition. You're still getting that point across, even though it's from different mediums and different angles, and you're basically starting to slowly sort of manipulate or persuade people into your way of thinking. So it's like blotting paper. When you've got white blotting paper and you drop a blue drop of ink onto it, it spreads out. You drop another bit and it spreads out, and eventually the more sort of dropping you do, eventually you turn that whole sheet of white blotting paper into something blue. So it is constant repetition. And you mentioned stories as well. Stories is very, very powerful. The human brain, they believe, is wired for stories. They believe, because I mean, if you think about things, the Bible, the Norse mythologies, we learn through story, and we learn our history through story. We take it in better than facts. If I was to tell you a story about something that had facts embedded into it, the chances are you would remember it more than if I just gave you a handful of facts.
Yeah. And
there's been a few cases, and story is an incredible way of selling your products. It's something that people should have in their sales copy. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples if I can. And this is from Seth Godin. He has a book called All Marketers Are Liars, or All Marketers Tell Stories. I think the word liar was scribbled out, part of the title, but it's by Seth Godin. And in there he talks about the Riedel wine glasses. These are glasses which they retail at several $100s and are designed specifically to make wine taste better, whether it's a £200 bottle or a cheap bottle from Aldi. Wine should always taste better in these glasses. Okay? And so people buy them, especially wine connoisseurs. It's always like, well, if you're going to have this expensive wine, we must drink it out of this glass. And so they buy it.
Never understood
but
that.
I don't. The story is they buy into the story. And that is because they've created this story that people believe. And they did a blind test. And so they took 2 groups of people. And they had 1 bottle of wine, or 1 type of wine, and they were poured into 2 different types of glasses, and both groups were told to drink the wine from these 2 different glasses and compare the taste. One group was told nothing. All they were told was, drink this wine out of this glass, drink it out of that glass, tell us which one tasted the better. Then the other group was told the story about the wine glass, how it was made by craftsmen, how it was blown, the glass was shaped, how it was designed specifically to make wine taste better. And they're giving the whole story. And the results were that the group that were told the story voted the wine tasted better in the Rydell glass.
Mm.
But those who weren't told the story, it was basically 50-50. There was no difference.
Yeah. No.
And
Yeah.
so that goes to show you how story influences people's decision making.
Yeah. That's massive, isn't it?
It is. I mean, there was another story as well, which I remember sharing with you not so long back, and I found this one interesting. This was a journalist who went to in America to a thrift shop,
I remember this. Yeah.
He bought I think it was a plastic wooden horse head, and he paid a writer to come up with a story, and so something that cost him a few dollars, he sold for probably $60 to $70. And then he decided to get the writer to write stories for everything he sold. I can't remember the figures off the top of my head, which after talking about specifics isn't good. But he basically took an investment of several $100s and turned him into, I think it was a couple of thousand, all because he added stories about the products that he was selling, which he bought cheaply from the thrift shop.
So he was buying stuff for like a couple of dollars.
Yep.
In like a charity shops or thrift stores, and then putting like a backstory on the
Yep.
item on his eBay listing. Yeah.
Yep.
Which then I don't know whether it's overinflated the value or however you want to look at it, but then basically made the sale price of the items go through the roof. That's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, a story's a story. They don't, you're not. Some people may just say you're lying or not, but
no, yeah. But when you said about then, because I've heard about that, and yeah. But one of the things I remember reading years ago was it was all about like I don't know if it's not speed reading, but it's like memory. It's like super memories and things like this.
Mm-hmm.
And they say that if you have a massive long sequence of numbers, or let's say a sequence of numbers, for example, in order for you to, if I said to you 5, 8, 6, 15, 20, and listed a load of numbers off, you'd probably remember a few, but you wouldn't be able to remember the whole lot. And one of these methods I was reading about, I never really kind of followed it up, but I remember reading it, was that you give every number imagine you're going on a story, imagine you're going on a journey, so like on a path, and you give every number, say you do need to remember this 10 number sequence, every number you give a specific item or a specific part of that journey. So you'd say, I don't know, I walked down the path and opened the gate. The gate is number 7, right? Then I went down the path and tripped over a rock. The rock was number 2. And it's easier to remember I went down the path, opened the gate, tripped over a rock, than it is to remember 7, 2, 8. So, and that's how it was the whole book about these kind of super memory learning. Yeah, a little bit off topic, but anyway, yeah.
Well,
so like you mentioned about saying the brain is wired for story.
It's not off topic at all, really, because I mean that is exactly what the whole purpose is. I mean, it's association, but the brain is wired for story, and that's how we've learned. That's how, like I say, the stories of the Norse mythology and how ancients pass on stories to be learned, even in the Bible or in other things. We pass down information through story because it's easier for the brain to take. And with sales copy, when people associate a story, they put a story into sales copy because it helps, not just helps sell the product, but people begin to, they find it hard just to read a list of features.
Technical spec.
They can't, the features and the technical spec just bores them. But a story conveys the whole product in a way that they can understand. It also tickles emotion, so they can get emotive into it, and they can be associated with the product. They get to know you. So story is very, very powerful. And like you say, it is something that it's what we're wired to do. And with a story, you can actually get the product. You can explain it often better, but you can also get to show empathy. And with a story as well, you can also offer up proof. And proof is something that is also powerful. As we know with sales copy, if you can get testimonials on your sales copy and your sales videos and stuff like that, it always helps sell. But that's because it's proof. So if you can get proof in a story, there was one For example, I'm just trying to think of if you were trying to sell like a hip flask and it's made from some sort of strong metal. Yeah. Your story could be if you knew if there was a genuine story, if there was a soldier out in Iraq or something had been shot at, and he had a drink thing in there, and the bullet hit that, and it actually stopped him from basically being killed.
Yeah,
that would be a fantastic story to put into that sales copy. Then people will be reading that, and so it kind of makes it more real, gives the more clout to the actual flask itself. It kind of also puts into the head that it's kind of life-saving metal. It gives you understand its strengths.
Strengths and that,
So putting story into your sales copy is incredibly powerful. It can also go wrong if you do it wrong. That's why a lot of it needs to be, in many ways, very positive. If you take someone down onto a negative journey, you need to come out at the other end with a positive reason.
Okay,
but,
so I mean, that's amazing. I mean, some of the that's been some real. Certainly, I've learned a lot during this one. But so just real quick, because we are getting short of time. I think could you just maybe put together like a real short kind of summary then on sort of for anyone new that's thinking about writing copy for the first time, whether it be to sell something, to list something, to end a blog post or whatever, what kind of summary sort of points would you sort of suggest?
Right. Basically, incorporate story as much as you can. Get a story or stories in there. Incorporate proof, either through testimonials or through the story itself, and through your proof if you can, as part of your story. Tell your story if you can't tell a story of the product, or if not somebody else's. Be specific. So try and be specific in your sort of numbers and your claims and your time frames, because it works better. It calculates better in the brain than just, in a few months you could earn a few pounds in a few minutes. So be specific. Headlines are extremely important. Again, good place to put your specifics and your proof if you can into a headline, because then you get people's attention and you get them reading through to the rest of your copy. I've definitely studied papers. So what we had was specifics, avoid wiggle words, proof, testimonials, features. Make sure you've got lots of bullet points. Your bullet points can have on there your product features, but then you also want to make sure you've got the benefits there. So the difference between a feature and a benefit is a feature is that your battery drill is 2 times faster than somebody else's drill, but the benefits is it means that you can finish twice as quick and spend more time with your family. So there's a difference between a benefit and a feature. Sales copy that has a benefit and a following feature often works a lot better. So that's something to bear in mind. Basically, and call to action. At the end of the day, copywriting is ultimately to get a result, whether it's a result that is someone says, not interested, or you're a bit of a dick. Whatever it is designed to create emotion, to build confidence one way or the other, and create a call to action. So basically get a result. So always make sure that your copy, your sales copy, your video sales letter has several calls to action, because generally people don't know what you want them to do or what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, they're kind of need to be told, don't they, and sort of guided. Yeah.
Especially if they're not used to the internet world, or if they're fairly old and that, they could probably read something and you've probably not even got a clue on them, the fact they need to click the button. So at the end of the day, if you've done your sales copy and people are still reading, then just say, if you want to learn more, make sure you click the button at the bottom of, or buy now before whatever, and click that button. Tell people what to do. So stick a call to action on there. I personally never believed that people couldn't figure out for themselves. But since becoming part of the copywriting in the internet marketing world, I've realized that how much people do not do if you leave them to try and figure it out.
Yeah, we've touched upon that before, haven't we, about things that, maybe just because you know it or you're familiar with something doesn't mean for 1 second that, everyone else is, especially people that you may even be trying to get as kind of buyers or partners or everything like that. But anyway, all right. Well then, I think we'll have to kind of wrap it up there.
Yep.
I wouldn't really add anything else other than the only thing I would add is, as with everything, test and try stuff. I mean,
Definitely,
I'm always a believer in, you know, trying things and testing stuff out. And I think copywriting and definitely calls to action is no different, really. I've seen changes on opt-ins just on the sort of color of a button or the, you know, the word font that I've used, or, you know what I mean? So it is a bit of a dark art. I mean, there are some guidelines definitely that you've mentioned there, but I don't think there's an exact science. It's one of those things which needs a bit of, you know, exploring and certainly testing out. But yeah, if you use the kind of the sort of main points that Andy's mentioned, then yeah, you'll be on the right kind of track.
If I can just quickly just sort of echo what you said about testing, just be very grateful that we live in a digital age, whereas the copywriters of the old would have to change a headline in next month's printed newspaper to test them. You can test them now. We've got plugins where you can duplicate a sales page within seconds, and then you can drive traffic to it.
Send them both out, don't you? One part of your audience gets one bit, and the other one gets the other bit, and then
you can change the words in a WordPress website in seconds. Yeah. So definitely test stuff.
Okay, well, good. This has been a really interesting one. So I hope you've enjoyed it. As always, I can be found, John Banks, over at signingcommand.com, and Andy. I
can be found over at freedomskillsacademy.com. So yeah, I'll just finish off now. I just want to say thank you very much for listening, and it's been good, and hopefully we'll get to see you again in next week's podcast.
Thanks very much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.